What is that heavenly sound? I want to hear this man read the phone book to me. And it was just there was something about his voice, and I just would grab it. And after the session, I just introduced myself, and I said, I don't know when or how, but I'm going to do something with you, and I can't tell you today. And he's so nice about it. He's like, oh, well, thank you. And he doesn't want to everything. And so we were teaching, Lisa and I were teaching the class, and I came back the next Monday, and I said, Lisa, I got someone to be in the film. And she goes, oh really? Did you know Harry T. Moore? I go, no, we just need him in the film. I don't care what he does, we just have to have him in the film. And she looked at me really skeptical, like, are you crazy? Like, you just don't. But I'm like, trust me, let's go meet him, right? And so we scheduled an appointment, and we went and we met, and on the way home from Stephen's house, Lisa's like, we got to get this guy in the film. I said, absolutely, right. That's not what I'm saying. So we did an interview with him, and we recorded Stephen reading the poetry of the ode to, was it the ode to Harry T. Moore? Is that the name? Yeah, the poem that was written in remembrance of Harry T. Moore. He had read it on film for us, and we were going to put it in the film, and it ended up getting cut. We ended up not using it. So at the end of that film, Lisa and I said, we need to do a Stephen Wright film. that was the next project. We're going to do something with him. And so we met up with him and talked about different ideas. And the thing that was on our mind is, we had been talking about Ocoee because to my right here, Kathy Perry at the time was a graduate student at UCF finishing her master's thesis on Ocoee. And so I was kind of occupied with her research on Ocoee. And when she had finished, Lisa had read it and said, hey, have you read this? I go, not only did I read it, I said I signed off on it. So she was like, can we do something where we have Kathy and we have Stephen and we have Ocoee and we have all this stuff. And at the same time, Lisa wanted to do something that was more abstract in documentary film than we had done. And so I don't remember who had the idea, but we approached Stephen and said, can you write poetry that would narrate an emotional story, an emotional narrative about Ocoee, Harry T. Moore, and of course what was going on in downtown Sanford at the time as far as the Sanford Avenue and the renewal that was going on Sanford Avenue and the loss that was there, because Stephen actually at the time was writing about this in the Sanford Herald. He had a few columns, I don't remember how many, but and so this was going on at that same time, and I said, Stephen's writing about this, and this is a sense of loss too, in the way that July Perry and Harry T. Moore are a sense of loss. And so we just asked Stephen to write stuff, and he would send us parts, and then we would look at it and we would kind of map out what we could do. And then ultimately over the course, I want to say it was more or less 2 years until we had a final cut of the film that you see before you.
Thank you. Kathy, what led you to do the work on Ocoee?
I went to can you hear?
Yes.
I went to a meeting of the Genealogical Association of Orlando, and Don Price, who was the sexton of the cemetery, the city cemetery, was there talking about the history of the people that were buried there, including July Perry's story. And I became interested in this story. Actually, all the lead actors are in the cemetery. July Perry, Sam Salisbury, who arrested him, and Judge Cheney, they're all located there in the cemetery. And I started to read about it and do more research and reading about Harry Moore at the same time. And then I met Francis Boykin, who was part of the first group that really, they got a grant from the Catholic Sisters in Opapka to do research, and they took on the elders of Ocoee in the 90s. At that time, Sam Salisbury's daughter was still living, and Sam Salisbury's grandson was still living, and they were all quite upset and very unwelcoming. But they started the groundwork that later has led to this success. And I was so glad when they decided, oh, we'll make a film of this. Yeah, thank you.
All right, and this one is for Lisa. Lisa and Robert. What were some of the challenges that you had in conceiving what kind of imagery you would have in the film, since it's an abstract work? What were some of the challenges, technical, and physical and artistic? And how did you overcome them?
Well, Robert and I have made several straight-ahead history documentaries with our students, and Dr. Wright was kind enough to have our entire class at his home to do the interview that day. He's been extremely generous with us and patient with us over the years in working with him. So we've done a lot of history documentaries. But I really wanted to try to stretch with these stories and evoke as much emotion as I could. And I don't know who said this, but I'll bet Dr. Wright knows. Somebody, I'm ashamed as an English major, somebody said that, if you want to read the facts, read the newspaper. If you want to know the truth, listen to poetry. And I just felt that this might be a moment where we could try to take Kathy's facts and Robert's direction and Stephen's poetry, and I could stumble around with some images and some music and see if we could all bring it together, something that looked and sounded different from your typical history documentary. And I think it is really different from anything else we've ever done. I hope it's successful. Sometimes when I see it, I'm not sure. But one element that I know is successful is Dr. Wright's poetry. That's what really
So, these films that we make, and I'll admit this publicly so you can put on the record, Lisa does all the heavy lifting, and she allows me to tell people that we make these films. And I think in that relationship, I think this film is the most in that characterization, because Lisa really had I got this idea and this idea, this visual, and I just kind of step back because I'm not aesthetically an interesting, or I don't have an aesthetic eye at all. So everything's literal to me, and I know when Lisa and I would sit down. Whenever we got to a point in the film that we were editing and we said, this makes sense, we took it out. And we just said, no. And so everything, and we just disciplined ourselves when we were making this film, because we had a bunch of other stuff in this film, and we're like, oh, no, this is giving the audience too much to kind of grapple with, or to has a foundation just to stand on. Let's remove it and do something else. So it's interesting when I watch it, because I remember I'm like, oh yeah, we were going to do this and we were going to do that, and it just made too much sense. And so, as an exercise, we decided to kind of have no net on this film at all. And me being a historian, I just want to tell narrative truth and whatever that is. And we took the risk here with this film to do emotional truth. It's an emotional narrative. It's not a literary narrative in that way.
And my final question that I want to ask is actually to Dr. Wright. In the poem that references Rosa, it's apparent that the hustle and bustle of the black life there and the buoyancy of it is very apparent, right? So, the two stories of Mims and Okoye are so devastating that they sandwich, that particular story. What is the significance of doing the narration through the eyes of Rosa as opposed to any other citizen in that community?
Oh, let's see, when I get that answer, I'm gonna let you know. No, I think you're on point. I had several answers as you were going through, so it'll come back in my old age. It's not easy these days to recall this quickly, but first of all, I think that your question echoes how Sanford was central to the region. It was the center of things. For instance, Harry T. Moore was brought to Sanford because that was the only place he could be brought to. And he was brought to the colored section of Frenno Walton, which was really a back room of the hospital there at 5th Street and Oak, yes, thank you. So it was that kind of thing. And when it came to agriculture and business, the railroads in the film highlight the centralization of Sanford. You know, in the Sanford Herald just the other day, there was a picture of a vacant lot that Nations is going to be filling up. And most people don't remember, and I was so happy to see that picture on the front of the Sanford Herald, because when people in Goldsboro walked downtown, they walked down the railroad tracks all the way up to 3rd Street and 2nd Street, and Chase's building was there. The packing house and everything else going on. But back to Rosa, or coming to Rosa. Rosa was married to my Uncle Luke, my grandfather's brother, Luke. And Luke was a folk artist. And Rosa alludes to his being something of a rough customer, because he was. He not only carved wood, he carved men. Very pleasantly so. Very, very, very interesting character. Rosa was very, very fair. Very, very fair. She was red. And I wanted to capture the color thing running through the community. And the fluidity of that and the complications that come with it. I remarked to a couple of people on more than one occasion, you were very fair growing up in the black community, and we thought you had all the advantages. And we forgot that you were standing there looking at us, feeling like an outsider. And so Rosa blends that kind of thing. She becomes a central figure. She ran a house of ill repute, and I shouldn't do it. I don't know if I've answered any of that.
You did. Thank you.
She'll forgive me. The one thing she used to say is, when she would visit our house, she would say, "Y'all some pretty little black children."
I think now we'll open it up for the audience. Are there any questions from the audience members? Is there a microphone?
Yes, there's an extra mic.
Okay.